Well, Hawaii story started in January of 1987. And that's when your grandpa Richard, the doctor told him that he wouldn't live to see another New Year. And of course, we'd known for 11 years that he was on borrowed time. But this made it a little more, what are you going to do type thing. And so anyway, as the time progressed, and this was probably in April, it was before Memorial Day, he decided he wanted to bear his testimony in church, but with this cancer in his mouth like he had, it was hard for him to talk and for people to be able to understand him. But he loved to play the organ, and he was the organist at the ward. And so he asked the bishop if he could bear his testimony with music. And the bishop told him yes, that would be entirely acceptable. So he went to the pulpit and told the congregation that he had always wanted to take me to Hawaii for our 25th wedding anniversary to walk hand in hand on Waikiki. But he said, being that he wouldn't be able to do that, he's asked me to walk hand in hand with him through eternity. And I had consented to do that. But he said he wanted to bear his testimony. And so he played a medley of songs. One was, I can't remember all of them now. How Great Thou Art. I think the other one was called something about testimony. Something to that effect. And because I've been given much. And it seemed like there was one more, but I can't remember. So anyway, he bore his testimony with music, and it really was a very inspirational moment in our lives, and many of the ward members still mention how they still remember that. And anyway, we went home from sacrament meeting, and someone from one of the wards that we had been divided off of called and said that he had understood that Richard had bore his testimony with music, and asked if he would mind coming to their ward because there were still a lot of people there that we had been divided from, if he'd come and bear his testimony with music at their ward. So we did. And around Memorial Day, we got a call saying that they wanted to know if this was Richard Muhlestein's home, and I said yes. And they asked if I was his wife, and I said yes. And they said that an anonymous donor had donated a trip to Hawaii for us, if it would be acceptable with the doctors for Richard to go to Hawaii. The sooner the better. So we, it was, I think, for a week, wasn't it? That we went for. And so we went to the doctor and talked to the doctor because we weren't sure how the flight would affect the cancer. And the problem that he was having in his, because of the sinuses and stuff, that where the cancer was at now. So we went to the doctor, and he said, yeah. In fact, he said, you can take me in your luggage if you want to. He was ready to go with us. And after that, there were, I can't imagine the kindness of people. I mean, one time we came home, and I don't know what Richard went to the truck for, but here was an envelope on the front seat with $100 bill in it. It said, for your trip to Hawaii. And the people at where he worked, I had just barely started working for the state, because we figured if I could get a job with the state, if he should, and the doctors had warned us that he might go into a vegetative state where the mind was gone but the body was still working, that we might have to put him in a care center. And so if I could get a job with the state where he was working, and I had worked for the state too, that if something like that should happen, then my insurance would take over where his had lapsed, and there wouldn't be any problem with an existing condition, them not covering it, because he would still be covered under the same insurance. So I had just been there. I started in May, and this was just a couple weeks. They said that they had some kind of an orientation meeting that I needed to go to upstairs, and so they came and got me and told me where I needed to go. And I get up there, and it was his office and the people from his office, and they had put together a donation of over $1,000 that they had collected for him to use to cover things that the already prepaid flight and hotel and all that kind of stuff had already been taken care of. They said there's always that extra that you need so that we could go. It just, everything fell into place. And so we got ourselves ready and left for Hawaii. And I didn't realize how miserable he was until we had landed and checked in and got everything taken care of. We even had made arrangements, this anonymous person, to make sure we had a fridge in our room so that he could keep his Ensure that he had to have, because that was the only thing he could eat that kept his strength up. So he would have that in his room cold whenever he needed it. And I didn't realize how bad he was until we got there, and all he wanted to do was sleep. He just, and I guess it was, of course, the different, the altitude, you know, the going up in the airplane, and then the different latitude of the islands. The doctor said all those things play with your equilibrium in your ears. He said you never think about that, but it does. He said he told us to make sure we wore sunglasses, because he said even the way the sun hits your eye at a different latitude or longitude on the earth makes a difference in your equilibrium and how you feel. He said, and that's why some people get kind of seasick after a long flight, and that because of the sun and the eyes and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, he was sick for about 2 days. And so I would go out and I'd walk a block up the street, and then I'd come back and go in and check on him. And I'd go walk a block down the next side of the street, come back and check on him. And then I'd walk a block down the street and up one more block, and then come back and check on him. So by the time I'd been there 2 days, I'd gone the whole way around the hotel. I knew all the buildings that were around us. And we still hadn't been to Waikiki because he just wasn't feeling good. And by the third day, he finally got the point that he felt good enough that we took our walk on the seashore. And it was great, but I wished he'd have felt better. And they had made arrangements for us to go to the Polynesian Cultural Center. And of course, I had to be the driver. And when we went to pick up the car, we'd ask for a small-sized car. They didn't have anything other than a Lincoln Continental. And I thought, oh, great. And I had no idea where I was on the island, other than around the hotel. And of course, being nearsighted, by the time I'd get to a sign, I was ready to pass it to know whether or not that's where I needed to turn. Richard says, I'll be your co-pilot. And I thought, okay, kind of like the blind leading the blind. But there was a lady at the rental place, and we waited for 2 hours for a compact car to come. And it didn't come. And anyway, this lady was there waiting for her vehicle too. And so we kind of struck up a conversation. Finally, she said, as she was getting ready to go, if you'll take that car that they have for you, the Lincoln, she says, you can follow me and I'll get you onto the freeway. And once you're on the freeway, you should be okay. So, but that's what we did. And once we got on the freeway, we got ourselves over to the Polynesian Cultural Center and walked in, and the people said, where have you been? We've been waiting for you. And I thought, nobody told us that we was supposed to be here at a certain time. So I felt bad. I just thought it was, come when you're ready to come type thing. So anyway, it was a wonderful tour. Enjoyed the programs, and then to go home, it was dark. I still didn't know where I was at. And of course, all the cars going home from the Polynesian Cultural Center. And I was going slow. And Richard was directing me, and
You found a dead end?
no, we didn't find a dead end, but traffic would back up behind me. So I come to a wide spot, and I'd pull over so that they could pull out and go past me. And then I'd pull back on, and I'd follow the tail lights. Finally, at last, we got onto the freeway, and we were driving around the Waikiki area, and I couldn't find the exit to get off to go to the hotel. So we tried several, they didn't take us to where we needed to go. So finally I said, I'm stopping at a gas station. So I stopped at the gas station, and the guy says, well, you just go down to this road and and as soon as I got off with his instructions, I knew where I was because I'd walked that area, and I knew where the hotel was. We took the car and parked it in the parking lot at the hotel, and it stayed there the rest of the trip. Everything else, we either took tourist rides or paid for a taxi. I thought, I'm not driving a car again. So anyway, we saw Pearl Harbor and all the high points of the islands, and went shopping, and there was one night I was sleeping, and the next thing I heard this crash, and I sat up in bed, and Richard had gotten out of bed and walked right into the wall. And I said to him, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I can't find the bathroom." And so he hit the wall and just fell to the floor and was just sitting there kind of in almost a fetal type position. "I can't find the bathroom." And I felt so bad for him. And I just kept thinking, if we can get home, we'll be okay. Because they'd even talked about what I should do if he should die while we were there. And I kept thinking, oh, I don't want that to happen. So we get to the airport. Well, even before we get to the airport, we had to check out of our room, but we couldn't go to the airport because the airplane that was supposed to come pick us up was delayed in Los Angeles because of mechanical problems. So we sat around the hotel lobby for a good 8 hours. And of course, Richard couldn't really sit. He was just kind of laying on whatever he could lay on. And finally, at last, we get to the hotel, or to the airport. And then the plane was still late, and so he just stretched out on the floor and used my carry-on as a pillow. Just stretched out on the floor, and I kept thinking, oh, bless us that we got home safe. And we did. We got home okay. We were home in time for Father's Day, and he played the organ for the Father's Day program, and that was the last time he went to church. He had gotten to the point where he just couldn't do it anymore. And then 4th of July came, and he had bought tickets for the Stadium of Fire. And Mike and his wife took, I think you took all the boys with you, didn't you? Mm-hmm. And they all went down to the Stadium of Fire. And I think it was the next day or something that effect. Either we were already in the hospital or we were right close to going to the hospital, that we end up back in the hospital. And he had such a big belly that he joked with the nurses. He wondered when he was ready to deliver. One of the nurses took me into the hallway, and she said, "Is he delirious?" And I says, "No, he's trying to be funny." And she said, "Oh." So anyway, it was just he didn't come back out of the hospital after that, and he died the 11th of July, 1987. That was the day after our 23rd wedding anniversary. So anyway, that's our trip to Hawaii.